Hi everyone, my name is Trisha Whitmire and I am the project coordinator for Valencia's Department of Justice grant. Today I'm going to be talking to you about murder in sociology. So the first thing I wanted to do was just kind of define a few things. So first I'm going to start with homicide. Homicide is the killing of one person by another. It has various levels, so murder and manslaughter being the two main ones, and then within each of those there's also various levels. Murder requires malicious intent, so the purpose being to either cause the murder of somebody else or to cause significant bodily harm. It could also include situations where death wasn't the intent, but it did happen because the intent was to harm somebody so severely and it did result in the murder. So there's a couple different levels underneath the topic of murder. So first degree murder is murder that's premeditated, so meaning that it was planned, it was deliberate, the person who committed it really did intend to kill the other person. The planning period doesn't have a specific time frame, so it could be that somebody planned for days, weeks, or months, but it could also be that somebody planned for a very short period of time beforehand. So it could be a situation where maybe somebody walks in and sees something and then decides to walk out, grab a weapon, and come back. That period of kind of walking out and coming back could be enough time for premeditation. The next one is second degree. Second degree is spontaneous or under the influence of drugs or alcohol. So it's still the person did intend to kill the other person, but it wasn't something that was planned in advance. It just kind of happened more spontaneously, or because of drugs and alcohol, they were not making the most informed decision. There's also something called felony murder, and this one's interesting because what usually happens with felony murder is that the person being charged isn't actually the one who committed the murder themselves. Felony murder is something that happens when death results during the commission of a dangerous felony. So take, for example, if a group of people were to have robbed a bank together, and during the course of that armed robbery, a security officer shoots and kills one of the robbers. Those who were involved in the commission of that felony, the other ones who were there robbing the bank, could be charged with felony murder because their partner died during the commission of that felony. Moving down from murder, the next level is manslaughter. Manslaughter is something that lacks the malicious intent. So something happened and that resulted in the death of another person, but the initial cause of that wasn't something that was malicious. The person did not intend to kill the other person, but it happened because of a variety of factors. So there's two different types here. The first being voluntary. So voluntary would be something like during the heat of passion. So say a parent walks in and sees that something terrible is happening to their child, and they kind of lose it in that moment and kill the person that is doing something to their child. That would be one of the cases of voluntary manslaughter. Could also be an assault where the death wasn't expected. So it would be maybe a situation where somebody gets punched once and it just happens to hit the right spot and they die. So the initial violence was something that was anticipated, but the death wasn't. Another one could be excessive force during self-defense. So maybe somebody's trying to defend themselves and they just go a little bit too far, and the amount that they needed to defend themselves was a little bit excessive. Provocation is something that could reduce a charge from murder to manslaughter. So if somebody is being provoked, that might be something that would cause that reduction in the sentence there. There's also involuntary manslaughter, which happens if death is a result of negligence. That's something that you might see during like a car accident. So if somebody kills somebody because they ran a red light or a stop sign, it wasn't that they were intending to kill another person, but they did because they were negligent during their actions. So why do sociologists look at murder, and why do we look at the reasons why people kill? It's really important for us to understand the causes of murder, because that's the way we can try to prevent it. We can't really do much about it if we don't know why people decide to murder each other. It also helps to kind of impact decisions of guilt or innocence. So what was the cause here? Was it provoked? Was it accidental? Was it intentional? Was it planned? It can also influence the severity of punishment. So not only is somebody innocent or guilty, but also what should their punishment be? Should it be the death penalty? Should it be life in prison? Should it just be a few years because of the situation? So it's important for us to understand all these different factors. There's some psychological explanations as to why people kill. These have probably been looked at more than anything else. There's things like looking at past physical, sexual abuse, neglect, whether or not somebody has specific personality traits. So we might hear somebody being referred to as like a psychopath, having a really aggressive personality, or having some sort of mental illness. But what we're starting to see now is we're looking a lot at the psychological explanations along with sociological explanations, because we're starting to see that the environmental factors do play a role. It's not just what's going on inside somebody, but also the outside factors that are influencing them as well. This goes back to the nature versus nurture argument, and starting to see that it's not versus, but it's more and. It's a little bit of the nature of somebody, but also the nurture, so what's happening around you. So a few different sociological explanations, one being neighborhood characteristics. So what's happening in the area that somebody lives in? Is there a lot of poverty? Are there lack of social bonds? So are people really tied to their community? Are there violent subcultures? So is violence something that's pretty common in that area? There's also something called relative deprivation, and this refers to kind of comparing yourself to others. So say you live in an area where everybody is on the same income level, everyone is in poverty. You might not feel that you're quite as impoverished as if you were living in a neighborhood where everyone has mansions and you have a trailer. When you're comparing yourself to others, you might not feel as deprived if you're surrounded by those that are in the same level. There's also strain. The strain is something like frustration, anger, disappointment, fear. It usually stems from not being able to achieve goals. So not having the resources or the abilities to achieve goals can cause people to be extremely frustrated, and that has also been tied to explanations of crime. There's also something called social learning theory. What this refers to is somebody kind of learning that violence is acceptable through their role models in a kind of a reward and punishment system. So if the people in the community are extremely violent and the ones who are doing the most violence are getting rewarded, maybe they're the ones who are kind of in charge, then they're saying that that's kind of a reward and that's a good thing to do. It might be more likely to continue that violence. And also having a lack of an attachment to the community. You have nothing left to lose if you're not worried about the way that your actions are going to impact those around you. Overall, murder rates are on the decline, but the US does have one of the highest homicide rates in the world. Looking at kind of who murders who here, we see that most of the homicides are intraracial, which means that it's between the same race. So you typically have people murdering within their own race. When it comes to gender, most of the homicides are committed by men and of men. When women do murder, it typically is of men as well. The methods that men and women use are also different, which is interesting. So men will choose more often than not firearms, and women will choose poison or suffocation. Looking at the age, the majority of murders are committed by those in the 18 to 24 range, and the perpetrators and the victims are usually around the same age as well. And looking at where, large cities have the most homicides, which isn't really surprising because they have more people, but also the types differ depending on the area. So urban areas are more likely to have drug-related homicides or gang-related homicides, where looking at suburban areas, it's more likely to be family violence. What's important to think about when looking at murder is that correlation doesn't always equal causation. So a good example of this is that studies have found that homicide rates increase at the same time that ice cream sales increase. And this doesn't mean that ice cream sales cause homicides or that homicides cause more ice cream sales. What it means is that they both take place in the summer. Ice cream rates go up during the summer because it's hot outside, and murder rates go up during the summer because more people are out and about and interacting with each other. So just because they happen at the same time doesn't mean that they're causing each other, but it's one of the things that we look at in sociology. So thank you so much for listening, and I hope you have a great day.